Okay, so you're probably here watching this video either because you've just landed your first ever freelance client and now you're like, I need to get a contract and invoice together ASAP. So first of all, if that's you, congrats. A little circle of applause. Or you're here because you're a fellow planner like me and want to be prepared. If that's the case, congrats to you too for your forward thinking. So one of my favorite parts of freelancing is definitely sending contracts and invoices. I used to be very intimidated by it. I thought it was going to be way more overwhelming and complicated than it actually is. And once you kind of figure out the basics and you've done it kind of once or twice, it really, really is a fun part of the process because it means that A, you have a client, and B, they're going to pay you money. And that's what it's all about. So in this video, let's talk about how to send contracts, invoices as a freelancer, what you have to include on them. I'll give you a little checklist. Plus I'll walk through some free tools to help you with drafting your first contract or invoice. Hey, my name is Dea, freelancer, digital business manager, most recently an entrepreneur. And as always, you can find sections on the play bar below if you want to skip to a certain part of the video. Your time is precious, so take what you need. And if you want to watch this on 2x, I will not be offended in the least. Okay, let's dive into the video. So I'm going to be totally honest here. I wasn't always so good with sending contracts and all of that jazz, which reflecting back now, I realize that was a very risky business because a contract is your protection as a freelancer. It is what ensures you will actually get paid, and it protects you from a lot of potential issues that can happen down the line. All right, so let's talk about contract essentials, what needs to go inside every single contract you send out to your client. So at a minimum, here are some things you absolutely need to have included in your contract. First up, details of you and your clients' full names and company business addresses, whatever you have. 2, start date and when the contract officially begins or kicks off. If it's a retainer, what's the first day of the retainer? If it's a project, when does the project officially begin? Basically, kind of self-explanatory. I don't know why I explained it. 3, scope of the project in detail and any deliverables listed out in as much detail as you can possibly imagine. Okay, so I'm talking about not just blog posts, but blog posts. How many words is included? How many revision rounds are included? Are images included? Will formatting be included? Are you going to help them put it into WordPress? You know, as spelled out as you can. The more detail, the better, because then later on, if anything occurs, you can always just refer back to the contract where it is literally as clear as possible for both parties. In this section, you can also include changes or revision rounds included, if applicable, to the type of project or service that you're offering. 4, payment amount and payment terms. So essentially a schedule of the payments, how much you're going to be paid. Be very, very specific here on what type of payment type this is. If that's retainer, hourly, commission. If it's a mixture, make sure gets said that it's a mixture. I have a video that discusses the different types of payment methods for freelancers, like hourly, retainer, commission. I'll link it in the top right corner if you're curious. But yeah, make sure it's spelled out very clearly. If it's hourly, the specific amount. Your invoicing terms should also be spelled out in the contract under the payment terms. So I normally recommend at least 50% upfront, up to 100% upfront, depending on the level of trust with your client. You'll kind of have to see what they're comfortable with. And if they can meet you halfway at 50-50, then you're sure that you've already gotten some of the payment so that you can begin work. And then at the end, you invoice for the last 50%. I've also done it when I first started where I really had no trust built up with any clients because I had no social proof, no experience, no network, nothing. I just did the work up front. I would just caution you there to be very careful to do a little bit of due diligence, a little bit of homework if this business owner seems like they're going to be able to pay you. Has anybody mentioned them in any groups that you're in, communities of freelancers saying that, you know, they don't pay money, that kind of stuff? I would just do a little bit of research. I have done that before, but generally I would recommend at least 50% upfront if you're able to do that, and you can just let your client know that that is standard procedure for you. And then you're sure that you've at least gotten half of your payment up front before you even begin work. Make sure to also include any late fees that you want to implement. So this is something I highly recommend doing. It's one of those things that can incentivize a client who maybe is always late on paying invoices or really dragging their feet all the time. It kind of incentivizes them to pay your invoice on time, which is what they should be doing anyway. So if you have late fees, definitely build that in. If there's a deposit of some kind to secure their slot or their space for their project or their work with you, then you can include that as well, and then mention like, oh, if you pay a $500 deposit, that will be taken off your first month retainer or something like that. 5, a notice period, cancellation terms, depends kind of on the structure of your agreement with this person. So for example, if it's an ongoing retainer, then you'll probably have a notice period. Like for example, both parties can cancel if they just let each other know within 7 days before or 14 days before or something like that. If it is a one-time project, you might have something called a cancellation fee, which is if they want to cancel it before it's done, how much will that cost them? How much of the money will you keep essentially? 6, ownership of rights of your work. So who owns what? If you're creating things, are those free for the client to keep forever? Is that still your work? When does the right transfer over? Is it upon completion of the project and the payment of the final invoice? And finally, very important, signatures and dates of when everything has been signed off on by you and the client. So those are the key essentials. There may be more sections depending on the type of work. You might have like non-disclosure clauses, non-compete clauses, indemnity clause. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. So start with the checklist I just mentioned when you're checking over a contract, because those are really the essentials. But keep in mind, you may have to adjust depending on what your client would also like to include. So here are 2 free ways to create and send contracts, and I'm gonna pop onto Minidata and actually walk you through that. All right, so to get a free contract template, there are lots online that you can find. I will link a few below that have free templates, but important to remember is that this does not constitute legal advice. Obviously if you want something that's 100% legally certified, correct, to be completely foolproof, you should hire a lawyer. I've personally just always used contract templates and just made sure that I read through them and I carefully reviewed them and all of that stuff. So, just keep in mind what your preference is and then do whatever is right for you. So for example, Wise here has lots of free templates here that you can grab. So for example, if you just click one of these, it's like freelance contract template, contractor. So it'll just download a document, which you then can open and change and make updates to. And then to send it for signature to the client, what I like to use is called HelloSign. So HelloSign is, they have paid plans, but I just use the free plan, which is basically you get 3 free contracts that you can send for signature every single month. So here you can see send 3 documents every month, which for me, I don't really send more than 3 documents a month for signature. So I just use that. So if you just press sign or send, then you can drag the document that we just downloaded into upload file. It'll load it in basically. We'll wait for that. And then we'll put the name of this signer. So you would put your client's name, client. Sorry, I have to go to my keyboard over here. Client. And then I'm just going to put in a fake email address. Okay. Sorry for the person that has that email address. And then we'll want to place the fields into the contract of what they need to fill out. So for example, so here you would obviously put your state if you're based in the US. So you could just drag in a text box that allows the person to put in the state. You should probably put this in. So if you see here, the signers is you and the client, right? So anything that you think you should fill out, probably the state you should fill out, you can click here and then assign it to me. So then you have to literally type it in now. But anything you want the client to fill out, obviously then you will drag it in and assign it to the client. So for example, freelance contract is made as of this. You can just put, no, that's not it. You can just put text box and then it's assigned to you. So you'll just put in the date of today between, and then you'll want your name. So that's my name already automatically filled out. Address, you'll probably put a text box and then you fill in your address, and with clients, then you'll go over to the client. You'll be client of the name, full name, and then you'll put in text box, and then you can drag this so that they have more space and they should fill in the address. You can also type in placeholder text address so that they have a little bit more instruction of what they should add in here. And then fill out this information. You can also edit the document before you load it into HelloSign if there are any sections you want to completely delete. And then at the bottom, you'll want to drag in the client signature. So this is where the client signs. And this is where you sign and the client's full name. So you just put in the client's full name. So this is your signature then. So you can assign it to you, and then you can draw in your signature or type it or take a photo and then insert your signature. And then you'll press next, and then it will allow you to review the contract one more time, and then you'll ship it out to your client to sign. And when they sign it, they will send you an email that notifies you that it's signed. They'll export it as a PDF, and then you'll have a copy of that contract basically. So that's how that works. So that's the first method. The second method, which is something new I just discovered, is Fiverr Workspace. So I made a little account just so we could play around with it a little bit because I was curious to see how it worked as well. Fiverr Workspace used to be called & Co, which I used to use, and I didn't realize that Fiverr, I'm guessing, bought it or rebranded it, I'm not sure. But they have a free plan as well. It's free for one client, so if you're just signing your first client, it can be a great way to try it out for free. And they have ready to use contracts, so you can just make a free account and on the left-hand side, contracts, press new contracts, and then you can fill in all the information of your project, what type of project it is, what type of services you're offering, right? So that's like the description, billing schedule, all of that stuff, and then it will automatically create a contract for you, and then you can send that to the client to sign. So also pretty cool. So that's the second option. All right, so now let's talk about what needs to go on an invoice when you're sending an invoice. Here are some absolute essentials that have to be on there. This may vary slightly depending on your countries and the regulation of where you live or where you do your business, but generally you will need at least these things. First up is your full name and business address and contact information. Next up is the full name of the person paying the invoice and their business address and contact information. Third, an invoice number. So ideally start with like 1 and go sequentially. Like for example, you could have the first invoice be like 1001 and the next one is 1002, 1003, so on and so forth. So you can kind of keep track of it. It's also good to have the word invoice actually on there as a header. Next up is the issue date of your invoice itself. So when did you actually send it to the client? That's just kind of something for your records to know that when it went out. And then separately, you should have a due date of when the invoice is due. Personally, for me, I just normally do like 7 days from the issue date. Just keep track of the due date because if the due date passes, that's when you'll want to begin following up and potentially like implementing the late fee and everything. Next up, very important, a description of what was purchased. So the amount and the total, and also don't forget about the currency. So really break down in detail if there are multiple aspects to the deliverables. Like if you have multiple deliverables, list them all out, how much one costs and then how much of it they purchase and then the total for each item. If it's a retainer, you can just kind of describe what you do in that retainer on a monthly basis. If it's hourly, just make sure you put like your hourly amount, how many hours it was, the total, that kind of stuff. Very, very important. Try to be as clear as possible. It's also good for your records to remember what you did exactly for that month. And then in the footer, I normally put my payment details, so like bank information. Personally, I use Wise to accept payment, and so I'll include my Wise email and any other bank info that they need. You can also, include like hyperlink and invoice link in the footer of your invoice as well, like where they should go to pay it, essentially, like for example, Stripe or PayPal. And if applicable, also any tax info, if you have to charge tax of some kind, should be included on the invoice as well. Like for example, in the EU, we have VAT depending on where your clients are based and what kind of business they are. So that I would work into after the description of services. I would put the VAT, the amount, I would calculate that, and then I would add up the total of the service cost and the VAT. And that would be the total amount, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's put all that together and go on to some tools that can help you send and make invoices for free as well. So invoices, there are 4 ways I'm going to talk about. The first way is you can just send something via Stripe or PayPal. Like that's, if you're like invoicing with Stripe or PayPal, the easiest thing is you can just send invoices via Stripe or PayPal directly to their email address and not fuss with any other tools or softwares. Just sign up for a free PayPal or free Stripe account, create an invoice, input the client's details, their email, their company address, and then it'll just send it to them and then they can just pay it via that invoice if you're using Stripe or PayPal. They're not my favorite payment processors to use. I prefer Wise myself. I have a video on that. I'll link it in the top right corner if you want to go ahead and watch that. So my second method is kind of like a manual plus Google Docs-ish method. So what you'll do is you'll want to find a free invoice template, and let me just tell you, there are tons out there. I'll also link the ones from Wise just because they were the first ones that showed up on Google when I looked. But you can see here, you can download invoice templates from them. You don't even have to put in your email address. They'll take you like straight to the invoice. So these are all Google Docs ones, which is really easy because then you can just have it all in your Google Drive and you can make duplicates for every single new client. So just pick the one that you think looks the nicest. So I'm like, this one I kind of like. So you just press it, and then it'll take you to the Google Doc directly and you can then make a copy. So then just like fill in the information, put in the client address, put in your address, put in the invoice number, the invoice date, put in the things that you did for this client, put in the total, if there's a tax rate, your bank account invoice details, anything they need, terms, all of that good stuff. You can also delete this footer if you don't want it there. And then what you'll do is just go to File, Download, and then download as PDF. And then you'll just email it to your client. So that's super easy. That's what I did for a very long time. It works perfectly fine. So yeah, don't feel like you have to overcomplicate or like pay for tools or anything like that to send an invoice. You don't have to. All right, the third way is called dubsado. Dubsado I love for business management, and you can have up to 3 clients for free with dubsado. So that's really nice. So you can get started, see if you like it. You can send both contracts and invoices with dubsado. It also integrates with Stripe, PayPal, or Square. So you can take payment via your invoice in dubsado. So this is just what a dubsado account looks like. And then here in the templates, you can see that there's this thing called forms. And if you click into it, you can create contract templates in here, and then you can always reuse it for new clients. So that's really awesome. And then what you'll want to do is normally you'll just go to projects and you will make up a new project for like a new client. So for example, sample client. This was also a fake one that I made to show somebody something. And then you can keep track of everything in dubsado. So like all the emails back and forth, invoices that you send to this client and whether they're paid or not. And yeah, you can just fill out all the information here and then go to send via email, or you can just send them a link to the invoice. So that's how you do it with dubsado. Very easy too. And the final option is Wave. So Wave is also pretty useful. Wave is like, I would say more of like an accounting tool. You can invoice in any currency. They accept credit cards and bank payments, so very useful. They have invoice templates, so you can use their invoice templates and just personalize it. So once you make your free Wave account, you can just go in and then go to sales, then invoices, and then you'll open that up and you can just create a new invoice, fill out all the information. So you'll want to add a customer and all of their details. If it's a new client, you can just set up that client under customers and it'll just like pull that information on all the invoices, add the items for what you did your work for, all that stuff. And then at the bottom, you can just press save and continue, and then you can send it to your client, that invoice. So yeah, those are 4 different methods, all for free. Hopefully there's one in there that you're like, yeah, I could try that, or I'd be interested in doing it that way. And yeah, let's go back to Big Daya so she can finish the video. All right. Now to wrap up, here are some basic tips for proper contract and invoicing etiquette and things that I've learned along the way. First up is make sure as much as you can to protect yourself. If someone seems like they are super sketch, like doesn't seem like they want to sign the contract, other people have complained about them, it seems like they're super unresponsive already before they've even signed the contract, you know, look them up online, look up their social media, Google them, look up their website, see if they're more or less legit, if they've been, a business for a while now. If anything looks weird and your gut feeling is saying like, I'm not sure, don't do it. I know like our mind's gonna be like, yeah, but maybe this, maybe that. Like if you're not sure, don't do it, because it's not worth it, because later it's just gonna be an even bigger headache if they don't pay and you have to like spend tons of mental energy and time trying to chase them and everything. Just don't do it. If it sounds weird, don't do it. Make sure to also protect yourself, like I mentioned briefly, by building in a late fee into the contract, and send them reminders about the late fee to incentivize them to hurry up if they have missed the due date. And again, make it easy for them to pay. Like give them the link quickly, make it super simple. Don't make them have to think about it or do math or anything. Just be like, click here to make your payment. Hyperlink that, right? They take it there, they enter their credit card information, done. Another way to protect yourself is to do a deposit or do a more fair payment term. Like I mentioned, 50-50, 50% upfront, 50% after the project is completed. That is a lot safer for you than 0 upfront and 100% after the project is completed, because sometimes that can drag on for a long time. And if you need that money to put food on the table, then, you'll want to make sure you build in some of those protection barriers. Another way to protect yourself is make sure your scope and deliverables written into the contract are super clear. Make sure everything that could potentially trip the client up or be cause for misunderstanding is cleared up in the contract itself. Make sure you've also defined what is completed as a project. so that it doesn't drag on forever where the client's like, well, I thought this was gonna happen. I'm not super happy with this. And, you know, like, just make it clear. Like, clarity is the best thing ever. And like I briefly mentioned, second thing definitely is make it clear and easy to pay you. You don't want them to struggle to give you money. Give them clear instructions on how to sign up for stuff if they need to register for something to pay you. Like, for example, if you use Wise and they've never used Wise before, just let them know, like, this is how you do it. Here's some instructions. I'm happy to hop on a call and help you, like, walk through this process. It'll take you less than 2 minutes. Make the link clear, take them straight to the invoice. And also test the link in incognito to make sure it shows up properly, and you don't have to do like the back and forth of them being like, I can't see it, and you're like, oh no, and you know. And third, make sure to follow up. So I normally follow up if it's past the due date of the invoice. I do it in like 2 to 3 day intervals depending on how busy they are until it gets done. If they said they wanted the project to start ASAP and they wanted to sign the contract ASAP so I can start ASAP because it's something super urgent, then I will follow up more regularly, like maybe even like daily after we discuss like they wanted to start the project yesterday. And if they're really dragging their feet a lot, get them on a call to see what the issues are and how you can expedite the issues and solve them for them. So that, you know, maybe even on the call, like work through it with them. If they're confused about anything, like just make that clear to them. And finally, here are some tips on what to do if a client doesn't pay an invoice. So like I mentioned, follow up, that's definitely the first thing. Do not be shy about it. Don't feel bad about bugging them, right? Like you've done your work. They're the ones that should be embarrassed, not paying you for, you know, work already completed. Like that's completely unprofessional. So do not feel bad about that. Second thing is stop work completely if the payment is late more than 3 days. This kind of depends on your tolerance and trust level with the client. If you are 100% positive they will eventually pay you, you can wait a bit longer before stopping work. But if you're worried they won't pay you, stop work within like days of the invoice due date. Third one is threat of legal action. This is kind of like the last step before taking someone to small claims court. I've never had to get here, very luckily, but I have heard of some freelance friends that sometimes even just have a lawyer send a formal email on their behalf, and they've said that that email is enough. It can be like enough of a threat to get someone to pay because they don't want to deal with potential like a legal hassle or anything. So even just having a lawyer send an email, you know, from their lawyer professional email being like, hey, this is super late. Here's what's going to happen next if this payment is not dealt with and paid in the next 24 hours or something like that. So that's it. That is what needs to go on an invoice, what needs to go on a contract, some tools to get you started. Hopefully it's helpful. And if you've just landed a client, let me know below because I want to cheer you on. And that's it for today. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.